I lost my good friend last week when Gene Siskel passed away. My colleague and sparring partner was only 53 years old when he died from an illness he'd been fighting since last May. Gene continued as long as he could to do the job he loved. On the first few shows after his surgery, he phoned in his reviews from his hospital room. Then he returned here to the set, where only a month ago he was seated right there across from me in the balcony, reviewing the latest movies. People have asked me why he continued working so long when he was ill, and the answer, I think, is he had a real passion for his job and he thought it was worth doing. Whenever he interviewed someone for his newspaper or for television, Gene Siskel always liked to end with the same final question: what do you know for sure? Okay, Gene, what do I know for sure about you?
Hello, I'm the nostalgia critic. I remember it, so you don't have to.
Film criticism as a whole still very much exists. You go online nowadays and you will see a plethora of varying voices all over the internet giving their opinions on films, whether it's watching classic movies for the first time and giving their reactions.
I'm in the gas line, I run! Get out! The gas line! He's gonna blow up their house. Holy shit, he's gonna blow up their house.
Coming out of the theater to give their first thoughts.
It was the best IMAX 3D, the only one. I have to see them back to back. If I didn't like the movie, Avatar 2 might be better. It's the one thing where I have to concede, no, the effects and the 3D IMAX, all that, it was pretty amazing.
Oh yeah.
So I really gotta see them back to back.
Or the general format of giving a full-on review, letting their thoughts of the film seep in, and giving their overall opinions on the film and whether or not you, the viewer, should see it or not. I've been lucky enough to allow that to be a part of my life as well, having done this for the past 2 decades.
It's kind of like this, it's not a bad movie per se. You can tell what they were trying to do with it, but it's not enough to make me say this is actually a good movie. It's a movie that's just kind of I'm glad I saw it, but I have no intentions of ever watching it again. Kind of feel the same way about this particular movie right here. I don't hate the movie. I don't like it either. I'm glad I got to see it once, but I have no intentions of seeing this ever again. I feel like there should have been some more to it, whether it was good or bad, but as it is, I just give it a mixed reaction right here. I can't really put my thumb down on it, nor can I really put my thumb up on it. It's just kind of it's there. It doesn't really leave a lot of a memorability to it once it's all said and done.
And everybody has their own unique way of covering the movies. But no matter how differently you do it, everyone can agree that there were 2 people out there who gave us a lot of inspiration to enter this certain venture of reviewing movies: Gene Siskel and Roger Ebert.
I have never felt a kill in a movie quite like that. Ever.
Not in Apocalypse Now, not in The Deer Hunter.
Not like that. Not like that. There's so much good in this film, I say it's worth seeing.
Well, but
I would not, so if a friend asked me to see it, I'd say see it, but be prepared to be disappointed.
For nearly 25 years, Siskel and Ebert were the premier voice of film criticism. When you needed to figure out what movie to see or wanted to hear whether or not a movie you were looking forward to was good or not, they were the voices you wanted to hear talking about not just said movies, but every movie. When you heard them talk, you could just tell that they loved their job so much. They loved to praise and pick through all different kinds of movies, but whether or not you agreed with them, they could even be more entertaining when they would argue with one another on a certain film.
Roger, my rebuttal of this film is, you're wrapping yourself in the flag of children, and I'm saying, go see The Black Stallion instead. There's a film with little dialogue.
Hold
much better.
on, I'm not wrapping myself in the flag of children. You're wrapping yourself in the flag of the sophisticated film critic who's seen it all.
No, boredom. Boredom with Benji running.
They would also educate the audience on the art of filmmaking by talking to some of Hollywood's most notable stars and filmmakers of the time, and use their love and expertise to explain how they would make the movie-going experiences better. They were the defining critics of a generation of young moviegoers and continue to be influences to a new generation to this day. Which takes us back to the ultimate question: what do you know for sure? So how did 2 critics from Chicago, Illinois go on to become the voice of a generation? Well, to answer that question, we need to go back to the beginning. The year is 1942. The world is in its Second World War. A little deer named Bambi from Disney makes its debut. Icons such as Stephen Hawking, Muhammad Ali, and Barbra Streisand are born into the world, along with Michael Eisner. Gas prices are as low as 18 cents a gallon, and on June 18th in Urbana, Illinois, a young lad named Roger Joseph Ebert was born. The only child of Annabelle, a bookkeeper, and Walter Harry Ebert, an electrician, he was raised Roman Catholic, attending St. Mary's Elementary School and serving as an altar boy in Urbana. His paternal grandparents were German immigrants, and his maternal ancestry was Irish and Dutch. His first movie memory was of his parents taking him to see the Marx Brothers in A Day at the Races. He wrote that The Adventures of Huckleberry Finn was the first book I ever read and still the best. He began his writing career with his own newspaper, the Washington Street News, printed in his basement. He wrote letters of comment to the science fiction fanzines of the era and founded his own called Stymie. At age 15, he was a sports writer for the News Gazette, covering Urbana High School sports. He attended Urbana High School, where in his senior year he was class president and co-editor of his high school newspaper, The Echo. In 1958, he won the Illinois High School Association State Speech Championship in radio speaking, an event that simulates radio newscasts. Ebert began taking classes at the University of Illinois Urbana-Champaign as an early entrance student, completing his high school courses while also taking his first university class. After graduating from Urbana High School in 1960, he attended the University of Illinois and received his undergraduate degree in journalism in 1964. While there, Ebert worked as a reporter for the daily Illini and served as its editor during its senior year while continuing to work for the News Gazette. His college mentor was Daniel Curley, who introduced me to many of the cornerstones of my life's readings: The Love Song of J. Alfred Prufrock, Crime and Punishment, Madame Bovary, The Ambassadors, Nostromo, The Professor's House, The Great Gatsby, and The Sound of Fury. He approached these works with undisguised admiration. We discussed patterns of symbolism, felicities of language, motivation, revelation of character. This was appreciation, not the savagery of deconstruction which approves literature as pillars do a rose, as Roger Ebert once said. One of his classmates was Larry Woolwide, who went on to become the Poet Laureate of North Dakota. At the Daily Illini, Ebert befriended William Knack, who was also a sports writer who covered Secretariat. As an undergraduate, he was a member of the Phi Delta Theta fraternity and president of the United States Student Press Association. One of the first reviews he ever wrote was of Federico Fellini's La Dolce Vita, published in the Daily Illini in October 1961. As a graduate student, he has the good fortune to enroll in a class on Shakespeare's tragedies taught by G. Blackmore Evans. It was then that Shakespeare took hold of me and became clear that he was the nearest we had come to a voice for what it means to be human, Ebert once said. Ebert spent a semester as a master's student in the Department of English there before attending the University of Cape Town on a Rotary Fellowship for a year. He returned from Cape Town to his graduate studies at Illinois for 2 more semesters, and then, after being accepted as a PhD student at the University of Chicago, he prepared to move to Chicago. He needed a job to support himself while he was working on his doctorate, and so applied to the Chicago Daily News, hoping that, as he had already sold freelance pieces to the Daily News, including an article about the death of Walter Brendan Behan, he would be hired by editor Herman Cogan. Instead, Cogan referred Ebert to the city editor at the Chicago Sun-Times, Jim Hodge, who was hired as a reporter and featured writer in 1966. He attended doctoral classes at the University of Chicago while working as a general reporter for a year. After movie critic Eleanor Keene left the Sun-Times in April of 1967, editor Robert Zonka gave the job to Ebert. The paper wanted a young critic to cover movies like The Graduate and films by Jean-Luc Godard and Francis Truffaut. The load of graduate school and being a film critic proved too much, so Ebert left the University of Chicago to focus his energies on film criticism.
This is where I first went to the movies, at the Princess Theater on Main Street in Urbana, Illinois. It's now renamed the Cinema, but you know, this box office, stainless steel, is exactly the same as it was when I was going to the movies. And you'd come along here, all of us kids, we'd line up in the alley, and then it was only 9 cents admission, so your parents would give you 15 cents, and you got 6 cents that you could take inside and buy popcorn and an all-day sucker. This is the room where I first became a moviegoer, and believe me, in Urbana in the early 1950s, you could see a lot of movies in this theater. The day would start out on Saturday morning with a free screening sponsored by the Urbana Chamber of Commerce, and the movie that really made the deepest impression on me was Young Abe Lincoln in Illinois, starring Henry Fonda. I still remember that great scene where he pulls out the almanac and proves that the guy was wrong about whether it was a full moon or not.
You see what it says about the moon? That the moon was only in its first quarter that night and set at 10:21, 40 minutes before the killing took place.
Then after that free movie, we would all pile out of the theater and line up in the alley outside and then all come back in again. That's when you paid your 9 cents and you got to see all kinds of movies that lasted all afternoon. It would start out with the coming attractions, then a newsreel.
Today, more than at any other time in their nation's history, the people of the United States stand in need of knowledge and of understanding.
Then the ads for all the local merchants, then 5 color cartoons, then there would be a serial, maybe Batman and Robin or Rocket Men on the Moon, and then finally came the double feature itself, and it would always start out with a Western.
Drop them guns on the ground unless you're going to use them.
There were a lot of popular cowboys in those days, and our favorites were Hopalong Cassidy, Gene Autry, Roy Rogers, Whip Wilson, Lash LaRue, but it was Hoppy that was the biggest star of the 1950s, and we would always wait for a Hopalong Cassidy movie.
They're through for the day.
And then after the Western came a comedy, and I seem to remember that it was always either Abbott and Costello or the Bowery Boys.
Don't worry about it. Leave that to me. You do the fighting. I'll do the worrying.
The Princess Theater was grade school. In high school, I didn't go to very many movies for some reason, but that all changed when I became a freshman at the University of Illinois, right here in my hometown of Urbana. There were 2 film societies on campus. Friday nights were right here in Gregory Hall of the Journalism Building. It was the Campus Film Society. Sunday nights were across the quadrangle in the University Auditorium. That was Cinema Internationale. In this room, for the first time, I saw Swing Time and Top Hat with Astaire and Rogers. I saw Humphrey Bogart in The Maltese Falcon.
Maybe you better tell him that shooting me before you get your hands on the Falcon is going to be bad for business.
Across the way in the University Auditorium, I saw my first Kurosawa film, Akiru, the story of an old man determined to accomplish one final thing before he died. And I also saw The 400 Blows by Truffaut, the story of a young boy right on the brink of adulthood. It was while watching those movies that I first became aware of the movies as something more than simply entertainment, more than simply escapism.
Four years after Roger was born, on January 26, 1946 in Chicago, Eugene Cal Siskel was born into the world. The youngest of 3 children born to Ida and Nathan William Siskel, who were Russian Jewish immigrants, his father died when he was 4 and his mother died when he was 9. Therefore, he was raised by his aunt and uncle. Siskel attended DeWitt Clinton Elementary School in Chicago, and nearby was the Northtown Theater, where he would often frequent to watch movies.
As a child, I saw movies here on the north side of Chicago at the Northtown Theater. It was an 8-block walk from my house to the theater here, and I felt like an adult for the first time, picking the pictures I wanted to see, eating the candy I wanted to eat. The films that made the greatest impact on me, the early Disney pictures, films like Dumbo, with a great shot of Mrs. Jumbo being chained up, a baby elephant separated from its mother. For sheer entertainment, it was hard to beat Peter Pan. The film played for 10 consecutive weeks here at the theater. I went every single week. The dim twinkling lights in the ceiling and the seaport Mediterranean facade held me transfixed as a child here at the Northtown. But sitting up here in the balcony now, it's a little less majestic. The theater has been cut up into 3 screens like so many grand movie palaces of old. As I'm sitting here, though, the thing that I think of most is that I saw my first adult movie here at the Northtown, the 1954 version of A Star is Born with Judy Garland and James Mason. I was 8 years old. This was an adult film about adults having adult problems. Out here on the mezzanine is where we used to come during intermission between the double features that were often shown here at the Northtown Theater. And when I think of double features and how they're often passé today, I realize that people don't seem to be as committed to spending a lot of time in the movie theaters, and that can be reflected in shorter running times for pictures and also in a shorter attention span. And if the people want less and are satisfied with less, you can bet that Hollywood is going to give people less. Rain Man is playing on one of the screens here at the Northtown now. I can't imagine anyone arguing, though, about the meaning of that film. But arguing about the meaning of pictures is what I did, certainly in college, One of the films that caused the greatest argument was Michelangelo Antonioni's Blow Up. What was the meaning of the tennis game without a ball at the end of that picture? Another film that triggered all-night discussions in college, Morgan, A Suitable Case for Treatment. Who was sane? Who was insane?
What's all this? It's an island of sanity, this car. An island in a world of pain.
This sparked his interest in films. Siskel also attended Culver Academies, where he experienced anti-Semitism firsthand when a schoolmate gave him a piece of toast on which jam was spread in the shape of a swastika. Siskel graduated from Yale University with a degree in philosophy in 1967. While at Yale, Siskel was classmates with poet Paul Manette and future New York Governor George Pataki. Siskel studied writing under Pulitzer Prize-winning author John Hersey, whose reference would later help Siskel get a job at the Chicago Tribune in 1969. Ebert's first review for the Chicago Sun-Times began as this. Jorge Lautner's Gallia opens and closes with arty shots of the ocean, mother of us all. But in between, it's pretty clear that what is washing ashore is the French New Wave. He recalls that, within a day after Zonka gave me the job, I read The Immediate Experience by Robert Warshaw, for which he gleaned that the critic has to set aside theory and ideology, theology and politics, and open himself to, well, the immediate experience. That same year, he met film critic Pauline Kael for the first time at the New York Film Festival. After he sent her some of his columns, she told him they were the best film criticisms being done in American newspapers today. He recalls her telling him how she worked. I go into the movie, I watch it, and I ask myself what happened to me. A formative example was reviewing Ingmar Bergman's Persona from 1966. He told his editor he wasn't sure how to review it when he didn't feel he could explain it. His editor told him he didn't have to explain it, just describe it. He was one of the first critics to champion Arthur Penn's Bonnie and Clyde from 1967, calling it a milestone in the history of American movies, a work of truth and brilliance. It is also pitilessly cruel, filled with sympathy, nauseating, funny, heartbreaking, and astonishingly beautiful. If it does not seem that those words should be strung together, perhaps that is because movies do not very often reflect the full range of human life. He concluded, the fact that the story is set 35 years ago doesn't mean a thing. It had to be set sometime, but it was made now, and it's about us. 31 years later, he wrote, when I saw it, I had been a film critic for less than 6 months, and it was the first masterpiece I had seen on the job. I felt an exhilaration beyond description. I did not suspect how long it would be between such experiences, but at least I learned that they were possible. He wrote Martin Scorsese's first review for Who's That Knocking at My Door from 1967, then titled I Call First, and predicted the young director could become an American Fellini. Ebert co-wrote the screenplay for Russ Meyer's Beyond the Valley of the Dolls in 1970, and sometimes joked about being responsible for it. It was poorly received on its release, yet it had become a cult film. Ebert and Meyer also made Up from 1976 and Beyond the Valley of the Ultra Vixens in 1979, among other films, and were involved in the ill-fated Sex Pistols film Who Killed Bambi. In April 2010, he posted a screenplay of Who Killed Bambi, also known as Anarchy in the UK, on his blog. Beginning in 1968, Ebert worked for the University of Chicago as an adjunct lecturer, teaching a night class on film at the Graham School of Continuing Liberal and Professional Studies. Ebert cited Andrew Sarris and Pauline Kael as influences, and often quoted Robert Warshaw, who said, "A man goes to the movies, a critic must be honest enough to admit that he is that man." His own credo was, your intellect may be confused, but your emotions never lie to you. He tried to judge a movie on its style rather than its content, and others say it's not what a movie is about, it's how it's about what it's about. He awarded 4 stars to films of the highest quality and generally a half star to those of the lowest, unless he considered the film to be artistically inept and morally repugnant, in which case it received no stars, as with Death Wish 2. He explained that his star rating has little meaning outside the context of the review, saying, when you ask a friend if Hellboy is any good, you're not asking if it's good compared to Mystic River. You're asking if it's any good compared to The Punisher. My answer would be, on a scale from 1 to 4, if Superman is 4, then Hellboy is 3, and The Punisher is 2. In the same way, if American Beauty gets 4 stars, then the United States of Leland clocks in at about 2. Although Ebert rarely wrote outright scathing reviews, he had a reputation for writing memorable ones for the films he really hated, such as North. On that film he wrote, I hated this movie. Hated this movie. Hated it. Hated every simpering, stupid, vacant, audience-insulting moment of it. Hated the sensibility that they thought anyone would like it. Hated the implied insult to the audience by its belief that anyone would be entertained by it. He wrote that Mad Dog Time is the first movie that I've seen that does not improve on the side of a blank screen viewed for the same length of time. Oh, I've seen bad movies before, but they usually made me care about how bad they were. Watching Mad Dog Time is like waiting for a bus in the city when you're not so sure they have a bus line, and concluded that the film should be cut up to provide free ukulele picks for the poor. Of Caligula, he wrote, "It is not good art, it is not good cinema, it is not good porn," and approvingly quoted the woman in front of her at the drinking fountain who called it the worst piece of shit I have ever seen. Ebert's reviews were also characterized by dry wit. He often wrote in a deadpan style while discussing a movie's flaws. In his review of Jaws the Revenge, he wrote that Mrs. Brody's friends poo-pooed the notion that a shark could identify, follow, or even care about one individual human being, but I am willing to grant the point for the benefit of the plot. I believe that the sharks want revenge against Mrs. Brody. I do. I really do believe it. After all, her husband was one of the men who hunted this shark and killed it, blowing it to bits. And what shark wouldn't want revenge against the survivors of the men who killed it? Here are some things, however, that I do not believe, going on to list the other ways that the film strained credulity. He wrote Pearl Harbor is a 2-hour movie squeezed into 3 hours about how December 7, 1941, the Japanese staged a surprise attack on an American love triangle. Its centerpiece is 40 minutes of redundant special effects surrounded by a love story of stunning banality. The film has been directed without grace, vision, or originality, and although you may walk out quoting lines of dialogue, it will not because you admire them. And a lot of these things are absolutely true, because I've seen these movies, and yeah, I totally agree, but... Ebert often included personal anecdotes in his reviews. Reviewing The Last Picture Show, he recalls his early days as a moviegoer. For 5 or 6 years of my life, the years between when I was old enough to go alone and when TV came to town, Saturday afternoon at the Princess was a descent into a dark, magical cave that smelled of jujubes, melted dreamsicles, and Crisco in the popcorn machine. It was probably one of those Saturday afternoons that I formed my first critical opinion, deciding vaguely that there was something about John Wayne that set him apart from ordinary cowboys. Reviewing Star Wars, he wrote, "Every once in a while, I have what I think is an out-of-the-body experience for a movie. When the ESP people use a phrase like that, they're referring to the sensation of the mind actually leaving the body and spiriting itself off to China or Peoria or a galaxy far, far away. When I use that phrase, I simply mean that my imagination has forgotten it is actually present in a movie theater and thinks it's up there on the screen. In a curious sense, the events in the movie seem real and I seem to be a part of them. My list of other out-of-body films is a short and odd one, ranging from the artistry of Bonnie and Clyde and Cries and Whispers to the slick commercialism of Jaws and the Budo strafe of Taxi Driver. On whatever level, sometimes I'm not at all sure, they engage me so immediately and powerful that I lose my detachment, my analytical reserve. The movie is happening, and it's happening to me." He sometimes wrote reviews in the forms of stories, poems, songs, scripts, open letters, or imagined conversations. Alex Ross, a music critic for The New Yorker, wrote of how Ebert influenced his writing. "I noticed how much Ebert could put across in a limited space. He didn't waste time clearing his throat. They meet for the first time when she is in her front yard practicing baton twirling, beginning his review of Badlands. Often he managed to smuggle the basics of the plot into a larger thesis about the movie, so that you don't notice the exposition taking place. Broadcast news is as knowledgeable about the TV news gathering process as any movie ever made, but it also has insights into the more personal matters of how people use high-pressure jobs as a way of avoiding time alone with themselves. The reviews start off in all different ways, sometimes with personal confessions, sometimes with sweeping statements. One way or another, he pulls you in. When he feels strongly, he can bang his fist in an impressive way. His review of Apocalypse Now ends thus: "The whole huge, grand mystery of the world, so terrible, so beautiful, seems to hang in the balance." In his introduction to The Great Movies 3, one of his books he writes this: "People often ask me, do you ever change your mind about a movie? Hardly ever, although I might refine my opinion. Among the films here, I've changed on The Godfather Part 2 and Blade Runner. My original review of Part 2 puts me in the mind of the brain crowd that besets Tom Hanks in Joe vs. the Volcano. I was simply wrong. In the case of Blade Runner, I think the director's cut by Ridley Scott simply plays much better. I also turned around on Groundhog Day, which made it into this book, which I belatedly caught on that it wasn't about the weatherman's predicament, but about the nature of time and will. Perhaps when I first saw it, I allowed myself to be distracted by Bill Murray's mainstream comedy reputation. But someone in film school somewhere is probably even now writing a thesis about how Murray's famous cameos represent an injection of philosophy into those pictures. In the first Great Movies book he wrote, he said, "Movies do not change, but their viewers do. When I first saw La Dolce Vita in 1961, I was an adolescent for whom the sweet life represented everything I dreamed of. Sin, exotic European glamour, the weary romance of the cynical newspaperman. When I saw it again around 1970, I was living in a version of Marcello's world. Chicago's North Avenue was not the Via Vento, but at 3 a.m., the denizens were just as colorful, and I was about Marcella's age. When I saw the movie around 1980, Marcella was the same age, but I was 10 years older, had stopped drinking, and saw him not as a role model, but as a victim condemned to an endless search for happiness that could never be found. Not that way. By 1991, when I analyzed the film a frame at a time at the University of Colorado, Marcello seemed younger still, and while I had once admired and then criticized him, now I pitied and loved him. And when I saw the movie right after Mastroianni died, I thought that Fellini and Marcello had taken a moment of discovery and made it immortal. There may be no such thing as the sweet life, but it is necessary to find that out for yourself." Siskel's first printed review, written 1 month before he became the Tribune's film critic, was for the film Rascal. His review of the film was not favorable. "Because of the excessive gimmickry, most kids will miss the tenderness," he wrote. Prior to this, he served in the U.S. Army Reserve. He was a military journalist and public affairs official for the Defensive Information School. And for a time afterwards, he was acquainted with Playboy magazine publisher Hugh Hefner. In 1986, the Chicago Tribune announced that Siskel would no longer be the paper's film critic, and that his position with the paper had been shifted from that of a full-time film critic to that of a freelance contract writer, who was to write about the film industry for the Sunday paper and also provide capsule film reviews for the paper's entertainment sections. The demotion occurred after Siskel and Ebert decided to shift production of their weekly movie review show, then known as At the Movies, from Tribune Entertainment to the Walt Disney Company. Editor James Squires stated on the move, "He's done a great job for us. It's a question of how much a person can do physically. We think you need that to be a newspaper person first. And Gene Siskel always tries to do that. But there comes a point when a career is so big that you can't do that." Siskel declined to comment on that new arrangement, but Ebert publicly criticized Siskel's Tribune bosses for punishing Siskel for taking their television program to a company other than Tribune Entertainment. Ebert privately suggested that Siskel join him at the Chicago Sun-Times, but Siskel remained a freelancer for the Tribune up until his death in 1999. He was then replaced by Dave Kerr as the film critic. Gene Siskel had an abrasive review style and claimed his film criticism was an individual exercise that should not be swayed by public taste. In an interview for the Academy of Television and Radio, his TV co-host said of him, "I think Gene felt like he had to like the whole picture to give it a thumbs up." In particular, he often gave negative reviews to films that became box office champs and went on to become considered mainstream classics. Poltergeist, Scarface, Beverly Hills Cop, The Terminator, Aliens, Predator, Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade, Thelma and Louise, Independence Day. This even extended to several films that went on to win Oscars for Best Pictures, The Silence of the Lambs and Unforgiven. Yet Ebert also noted in a memorial episode of Siskel and Ebert that when Siskel found a movie that he truly treasured, he embraced it as something special. Addressing his late colleague, Ebert said, "I know for sure that seeing a truly great movie made you so happy that you'd tell me a week later your spirits were still high." Some of Siskel's most treasured movies included My Dinner with Andre in 1981, Showa in 1985, Fargo in 1996, and the documentary Hoop Dreams in 1994. In 1975, Ebert received the Pulitzer Prize for criticism. In the aftermath of his win, he was offered jobs at the New York Times and the Washington Post, but he declined them both, as he did not want to leave Chicago. In that same year, the local Chicago PBS TV station decided there should be more film critics on television and thought of having a recent Pulitzer Prize winner from the Chicago Sun-Times and a young up-and-coming reviewer from the Tribune coming together to create a film review show. What would follow next was television history.
The name of our show is opening soon at a theater near you. 2 film critics talking about the movies, and this is Roger Ebert, the film critic from the Chicago Sun-Times.
And right over here is Gene Siskel, the film critic from the Chicago Tribune and Channel 2 News.